speaking arena and give his speech entitled, Let's Join His Club.
Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests. Tiger Woods, 33, the greatest failure of modern times. Why? Look at his record. Since 1997, when he first won the Masters, he's entered the 4 great golfing tournaments every year. The Masters, the US Open, the Open Championship, and the PGA. His results? How often did he win? 42 events, 52 events. He won just over 25% of those events. That's all he's won. The greatest golfer, we claim, in the world, with a winning score of 25%. Means a losing score of 75%. He's a failure. Even if you just look at the Masters alone, he has failed 75% of the times he's been in the Masters. And yet we call him the greatest golfer in the world. Why? Because we focus on his accomplishments and not on his failures. And that is the sort of club I want to belong to, a club that focuses on success and not on failure. Because I was brought up to think that failure was bad. And so you didn't enter a lot of things. You didn't do a lot of things because you were scared of that image that came around you when you're lost. That you're a failure. And I think so much in life has been wasted. So much of your potential, so much of my potential has been wasted because we didn't have the courage to go and try things out because of the fear of failure. Do you think Tiger Woods is scared of failure? He knows he's going to lose 75% of the time. That's a pretty good record. How many of you have not entered a speech contest because you're scared of failing? Skip it. You get in because you can only win by getting in. And that's the joy of it all. But it's not a modern thing either. You can go right back in history and see the same thing. You look at any great man in history and you'll find they were all great at failing. Failure was part of the price of success. Who can remember that old saying in 1492? Well, in that year, there was even a greater man than Columbus in my mind. A great man and a great failure. In 1492, when Columbus was sailing the ocean blue, there was a young teenager in Florence. His name? Michelangelo. He was just chiseling out his first sculpture when Columbus was sailing to America. And he is, in my mind, the greatest artist that has walked this planet. David, Pieta, Moses, Sistine Chapel, Last Judgment, St. Peter's itself. He was their architect in his 80s. The greatest artist of mankind. But he was also a failure. Failed in love. Loved the daughter of a Medici, but because of her family, nothing happened. He failed in his human relationships. He, Leonardo da Vinci, didn't get on. Da Vinci thought sculpture was a wasted area of work. And he felt bad. Raphael, the painter, couldn't get on with him. He felt jealous and envious. And the popes hardly paid him anything at all. He couldn't negotiate a good fee for his work. And he loved sculpture, but most of the time he wasn't able to sculpt because the popes decided that he should be painting or doing engineering work. But it was because of all these setbacks and the human tragedy in his life, the failures he encountered, that he became a better man, a stronger man, a man who could share more with us. It was because of his failures that he became a greater architect. He was never an architect when he started. A greater engineer. It was only because of the setbacks, his failures, that he learned the skills to help save St. Peter's. Because the engineers that were there before him were abusing the system and putting in cheap construction work and he had to go in and clean up in his 80s. St. Peter's. We can go back further. Go back to 63 BC, Cicero. At the time that Cicero was consul of Rome, he too was a failure, because at that time we had Crassus, the wealthiest Roman around, we had Pompey, the greatest Roman general, and we had Catalina, a psychopath. And in the background was Caesar, waiting for everything to fall apart so he could take over. And Cicero was trying to save Rome. And there were assassination attempts against him and everything else like that. And he failed in many ways to save the Republic. Yes, he was a failure, but he also was a great success. Come through to modern times. Harry S. Truman, my favorite president. He was a failure because he tried to get a universal health care back in the 40s. For us, he failed. But does that mean he should never try? And this is the lesson I've learned from life, is that we can never consider the option of failure in our decision-making process when there's a challenge ahead of us. We must simply consider the joy and the excitement of life, that it's worth the try. It's worth running the marathon, even if you're going to do it in 5 hours. It doesn't matter. It's the joy of life that really matters. And failure is simply the price we will pay on the journey. And I am now a happy member of the Failures Club of the United States of America. Now, Toastmaster.